We are now on the record. Participants should be aware that this proceeding is being recorded, and as such, all conversations held will be recorded unless there is a request and agreement to go off the record. Private conversations and/or attorney-client interactions should be held outside the presence of the remote interface. For the purpose of creating a witness-only video recording, the witness is being spotlighted or locked on all video screens while in speaker view. We ask that the witness not remove the spotlight setting during the deposition, as it may cause other participants to appear on the final video rather than just a witness. For anyone who doesn't want the witness's video to take up the large part of your screen, you may click the gallery view button in the upper right corner of the remote depo interface. This is a remote video recorded deposition of Anthony Taft. Today is Wednesday, October 7th, 2020. The time is now 9:07 a.m. Central. We are here in the matter of Sterling Green Community Improvement versus Dorothy MALVEAUX versus Thomas Olson. My name is Pam Longoria, remote video technician on behalf of U.S. Legal Support. I am not related to any party in this action, nor am I financially interested in the outcome. At this time, will the reporter Kathleen Tyler, on behalf of U.S. Legal Support, please enter the statement for remote proceedings into the record.
The attorneys participating in this deposition acknowledge that I am not physically present in the deposition room and that I will be reporting this deposition remotely. They further acknowledge that in lieu of an oath administered in person, I will administer the oath remotely. This arrangement is pursuant to the Texas Supreme Court First Emergency Order regarding the COVID-19 state of disaster. The parties and their counsel consent to this arrangement and waive any objections to this manner of reporting. Please indicate your agreement by stating your name and your agreement on the record.
Bill Chesney, Chesney, and I'm in agreement.
Peter Zavodnik and I am in agreement.
Will the witness kindly present his government-issued identification by holding it up to the camera for verification?
Need my driver's license?
Yes, sir.
Where's my VA card?
That works. Got it, thank you. All right, I will go ahead and swear you in. So would you raise your right hand, please, sir? Do you solemnly swear that testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes.
Would the witness state his name for the record, please?
Anthony Troy Taft.
Let the record reflect that this is the deposition of Anthony Taft taken in the matter of Sterling Green Community Improvement Association versus Thomas Olson. Mr. Taft, my name is Peter Zavodnik. I'm going to be asking you a series of questions about your involvement with Sterling Green Community Improvement Association, as well as some questions regarding your background and some questions regarding your knowledge of allegations of Sterling Green regarding Thomas Olson in this lawsuit. If at any time you do not understand a question, please let me know and I'll rephrase it. If I ask you a question and you answer it, I'll assume you understood the question. Do you understand that?
Yes.
It's also important that you answer all questions verbally rather than nodding your head or using your hands, because it's hard for the court reporter to take down your thoughts unless you state them aloud. You understand that?
Yes.
It's also important that you let me finish asking the question before you answer it, because it's hard for the court reporter to take down our statements if we're speaking at the same time. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
And finally, if you need to take a break, we will be happy to accommodate you. I only ask that you refrain from taking a break or asking to take a break while a question is pending. In other words, if I ask you a question, I will ask that you answer it and then take the break. What is your full name?
Anthony Troy Taft.
Troy.
That's my middle name.
Okay, thank you. What's your occupation?
I'm retired.
You're retired.
Yes, I am.
What are you retired from?
I'm an aircraft mechanic, blimp engineer.
I'm sorry, did you say Air Force mechanic?
Aircraft mechanic / blimp engineer.
When did you last work as an aircraft mechanic?
2014, September.
I didn't get that.
September of 2014.
And who were you working for immediately prior to your retirement?
Lockheed Martin.
What's your highest level of education?
High school, but I am a licensed A&P mechanic.
What does A&P mean?
Airframe and power plant.
Do you have any training in finance or accounting?
No.
Have you ever been convicted of a felony or a crime involving moral turpitude?
Negative.
Have you ever served in the military?
I have.
In what branch?
U.S. Air Force.
And what was the year of discharge?
1988.
And what type of discharge?
Honorable.
If the court reporter could pull up the notice of depositions, we'll have those marked as Taft Group Exhibit 1. Mr. Taft, can you please take a look at this document? And after you've reviewed it, after you finish reviewing it, can you let me know?
Can I control this document?
I'll let the court reporter answer that.
I can't, I have no control of this document.
You can control it. I can't. Pam, do you know how to tell him to control it?
Hold on.
There's some.
Give me a second. You try it now.
I have no control of this document.
There's some option that maybe if you try scrolling your mouse over somewhere, there's an option that I forget what it's called, but okay, let me just do it. Okay, can you try now?
Oh, okay, here we go. I think I got it now. Okay. Yeah, I reviewed it.
Is this a notice of deposition for Anthony Taft?
Yes, it is.
Are you here today in response to this notice of deposition?
I believe I am.
Yes, and for the purposes of the record, he is voluntarily appearing. There was no subpoena or anything. The association is voluntarily producing Anthony Taft.
Mr. Taft, are you a member of Sterling Green Community Improvement Association?
Yes, I am.
What is Sterling Green Community Improvement Association?
It's the association that manages our community.
Is it a homeowners association?
Yes, it is.
How long have you been a member of Sterling Green?
Since October of 1994.
How many members does Sterling Green have approximately?
2,200 plus.
And how does one become a member of Sterling Green?
By being a homeowner.
By being an owner of a home within the Sterling Green community?
Yes,
Are you currently a member of the Sterling Green Board of Directors?
I am.
When were you first elected to the Sterling Green Board of Directors?
March of 2019.
Are you currently an officer of Sterling Green?
I am. I'm the president.
And when did you become the president of Sterling Green?
Yeah, probably in, I think around August or September of last year.
August or September of 2019?
Yeah, somewhere in there. I'm not sure the date.
Did you have any role with regard to the Sterling Green Board of Directors during the period between March 1, 2018 and July 31, 2018?
No,
Do you know Tom Olson?
yes, I do.
How do you know Tom Olson?
He was on the board.
Of Sterling Green?
Yes,
Did you serve on the Sterling Green Board of Directors with him for a time?
yes.
During what period did both you and Mr. Olson serve on the Board of Directors of Sterling Green?
Between April 2019 and around August or September, somewhere around in there.
So Mr. Olson is no longer a member of the Sterling Green Board of Directors, correct?
That's correct.
How did Mr. Olson's membership on the Sterling Green Board of Directors terminate?
Mr. Olson had a problem respecting quorum decisions. And he had some of our equipment, and we, the full board of directors voted for him to bring it back. And he decided he didn't have to. And among other things that the board voted on. So we decided that if he couldn't respect the quorum of the board, he couldn't be on the board.
Did the board vote to remove him?
Yes, we did.
On what date did the board vote to remove him?
I don't remember the date.
Was it in August or September of 2019?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Was it at a meeting attended by the members of Sterling Green?
It was the board of directors meeting.
I have to object as non-responsive. I'm asking if the members of Sterling Green, if owners were present at this meeting in which the board of Sterling Green voted to remove Tom Olson.
Everyone in that meeting was a homeowner. They were also a board of director.
I have to object as non-responsive. What I'm asking is if homeowners other than homeowners who were also members of the board of directors were present at the meeting at which the board of directors voted to remove Mr. Olson.
No.
Was this an executive meeting?
It was.
How did Mr. Olson not respect quorum decisions of the board?
Objection form. You can answer it, Anthony.
As I said, we asked, we voted for everyone that had association, equipment that it needed to be brought back. And Olson had an iPad, among other things, that we needed to account for. And he flat out said that he wasn't going to bring it back. And, we considered that theft.
When did the board vote to require everyone who had Sterling Green equipment to bring it back?
Excuse me?
You said the board voted to require people who had Sterling Green equipment, that the board voted to require them to bring it back. My
Yes.
question is, when did the board hold that vote?
Whew. We first voted that probably around in May or June, because we wanted to inventory everything that we had when we first got on the board. It probably was in April. I'm not sure. It was early on, though.
And can you identify who were the members of the board of directors at the time the vote to remove Olson occurred?
Our president was Walter Gant. Vice president was Linda Bowie. I was the secretary. Our treasurer was Ellen Pollock. And and then Tom Olson was member at large.
How many members of the board were present at the meeting at which the board voted to remove Olson,
The full board was there.
including Olson?
Yes, he was.
And what was the vote? In other words, was it unanimous? Was it 4-1?
Unanimous.
Did Olson vote to remove
I
Olson?
don't even remember I don't remember what the vote was. I just know it passed.
And can you cite any provision of the bylaws or the declarations or the articles of incorporation or of any statute that authorizes the board of directors of Sterling Green to remove a member of the board of directors from the board of directors of Sterling Green?
Objection form. You can answer to the extent you can, Anthony.
Yeah, there's provisions of removing a board director. There's provisions.
I have to object to this non-responsive. Please identify the provision of the bylaws, articles of incorporation, declarations, or any statute that authorizes the Board of Directors of Sterling Green to remove a member of the board from the Board of Sterling Green.
Objection form.
My answer to that is, every board member is obligated to respect quorum decisions. And, that's one thing that we have to honor as board members. And when we don't do that, we subject ourselves to whatever.
I have to object as non-responsive. I'm asking you to identify the provision of the bylaws, the articles of incorporation, the declarations, or any statute that authorizes the Board of Directors of Sterling Green to remove a member of the board from the Board of Directors of Sterling Green.
Objection form.
I don't have that in front of me, so I can't answer that.
Does that mean you don't know?
No, that's not what he said.
Does that mean you cannot cite any such provision because you don't know what it is?
Objection form.
I don't have it in front of me, so I can't answer that.
Okay, well, is it a bylaw? Is it a declaration? Is it a statute?
I don't know.
Okay.
Objection form.
Who is Sharon Provost
She is the office manager.
for Sterling Green?
Yes, she is.
How long has she been the office manager?
I think she became the office manager when we initially got on the board in April or March of 2019, as far as I know.
What are Ms. Provost's job duties?
To manage the association. She's over the whole staff. She pays all the bills. She manages the affairs of the association staff.
Are you aware that Sterling Green has filed a lawsuit against Thomas Olson that is pending in Harris County, Texas?
Excuse me?
Are you aware that Sterling Green has filed a lawsuit against Thomas Olson that is pending in Harris County, Texas?
Yes, I definitely am aware of that.
In the lawsuit, Sterling Green has indicated that each member of its board of directors has knowledge of Olson's misconduct, wrongful taking of association monies, and plaintiff's claims against Olson for damages caused by Olson's misconduct. Please describe the misconduct of Olson of which you have knowledge.
Objection form. You can answer, Anthony. It's a open-ended question.
Failure to bring back equipment, unaccounted for, non-accountability of money spent, money spent without authorization by a board quorum, among other things. I'll just leave it right there. That's pretty much the gist of it.
Well, this is the only time we get to ask you questions before trial, so I'm going to ask that you not leave it right there. Is there other misconduct that you're aware of, other than what you've just described, by Mr. Olson, for which Sterling Green seeks to recover damages from him in this lawsuit?
I still didn't understand your question.
You said I'm going to leave it right there. That sounded to me like you didn't want to answer the question in full. I'm going to ask you to answer the question in full because it's the only time we have the opportunity to ask you questions regarding Sterling Green's allegations before trial.
Sir, that was my answer.
Is there anything other than equipment and money spent without authority?
I don't have everything in front of me, so I can't give you a full detailed answer.
I understand that. I'm asking you about those incidents of misconduct of which you have personal knowledge. So let's start with the equipment. What equipment does Sterling Green think Mr. Olson has that belongs to it?
I don't have a list of the equipment in front of me, so I
didn't ask you if you have a list.
answer, sir.
I didn't ask you if you have a list. I'm just asking you about your personal knowledge. Your personal
knowledge. We have a list of things, and I don't have that list in front of me. So
I understand that. My question is your personal knowledge. I think you mentioned an iPad. Is that correct?
I did mention an iPad.
Okay.
And other than that, there are 2 other iPads, and the 3 iPads, 2 of the iPads, well, we have all 3 of them back, but we don't have the credentials, so they're worthless. We don't have the credentials to get into them. And
okay.
Those are items that our association is in dire need of, and they're very expensive items, and for whatever reason, Olson was the only one that had the credentials to get into them. And we're just kind of at a loss to that right now.
Other than the iPad credentials, are there any items, any equipment that Olson has that belongs to Sterling Green?
Yeah, we have a projector screen,
I'm sorry?
Excuse me?
I just didn't hear you. Did you say projector screen?
Projector screen that the bylaws committee was using. A projector. It was several other things. I just don't have the list in front of me. So that's my answer. That's the conclusion of my answer.
I have to object as non-responsive because I'm not asking about what's in the list. I'm asking about what you recall. So other than the credentials, the projector and the projector screen, are there any items of which you have personal knowledge that you recall at this time?
He's answered the question.
I believe I said that was the conclusion of my answer.
I have to object as non-responsive.
That's fine.
Which means I'm waiting for an answer to the question. Bill, are you instructing him in that answer?
No, I'm saying that he has answered the question. He doesn't need to re-answer it. If you want to object, you can object, of course.
All right, I'll object as non-responsive. I'm just trying to find out, we've got the projector screen and the credentials. Do any other items of personal property come to mind that Mr. Olson has that you believe belong to Sterling Green?
And I believe I just said that's the only thing that I have knowledge of off the top of my head. That is my answer.
Okay.
Well, you can move on if you like.
Let me ask you this. What's the basis for your contention that Mr. Olson has the projector and the projector screen?
Because I worked with the bylaws committee a couple of times, and they all said that Olson purchased the screen and the projector that we were using. And to date, we don't have a projector or a screen in our possession.
And who are the persons who gave you this information?
I'm sorry, y'all are speaking over each other. Can you please?
That's my fault. I apologize. Go ahead.
And the only person that had control of those items are Tom Olson. Whether he let people on the bylaws committee use them or not, we still don't have that equipment in our possession.
And so you got this information from people on the bylaws committee, is that correct?
And Tom Olson,
Did Tom Olson tell you that he has the projector and the projector screen?
he said that he provided the projector and the projector screen. He bought that with the association funds.
So if I understand correctly, you infer because Olson told you he bought those items, and because you cannot find those items, I take it Sterling Green has a facility where they store items like that, correct?
Objection form.
Does Sterling Green have a facility where they store equipment such as a projector?
There is no projector or a screen, so there's no storage for it.
That objection non-responsive, that was not my question. My question was, does Sterling Green store its equipment somewhere?
And by the way, that wasn't your question, but I'll object to form now.
We have places, a room where we store certain equipment, but we also, equipment that's being used is used where it's used at. So I guess we have a place where we store some equipment, yes.
And have you looked in this location to see if the projector and the projector screen are in there?
I did.
And did you find they were not in there?
They're not there.
Okay.
I already answered that.
So, as I understand it, Olson told you he bought these items. You've been unable to find these items at the property. And from those two facts, you infer that Olson still has those items. Is that correct?
Objection form.
Olson was responsible for those items. And when he left, they were never returned.
I have to object as non-responsive. You believe Mr. Olson has those items in his possession, or is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And I'm just trying to find out all the bases for that belief. You've told me you looked for the items, you couldn't find them. You told me Olson informed you he purchased those items. Are there any other bases for your belief that Olson has the projector and the projector screen at present?
Well, let me put it like this. Whether he has the items or not, he's responsible for the items because he purchased them. He put the bylaws committee together, and if anybody on the bylaws committee has those items, he's still responsible as a board member that he was at the time.
So do I understand correctly, you're saying that even if a person on the bylaws committee has those items, that Olson is responsible for them?
Yes, sir. That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Why is he responsible for them if a person on the bylaws committee has possession of them?
Because if they were using them, Olson allowed them to use them, so he was responsible for making sure they got back to the association. Because he was the officer on the board, the board of directors.
And you know the names of the persons on the bylaws committee who may have possession of those items?
Objection form.
It could be, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking it may be Livingston Hampton might have that.
And have you inquired as to whether Mr. Hampton has them at present?
No, I have not. If he does have them, Olson gave them to him, so Olson will be responsible for giving them back to the association.
You know, you say you have knowledge of money spent without authority by Mr. Olson. Do you know the amount of money that you believe he spent without authority?
I don't have the exact amount, but I know there was a Department of Labor claim that was paid out by Olson out of the bank account that he had no authority to pay out because there was no quorum of a board of directors.
Do you have any dispute with him paying the Department of Labor claim?
Yes, I do.
Let me finish the question, please. Do you have any dispute with him paying the Department of Labor claim other than his lack of authority for doing so?
I definitely have a dispute with that.
Okay, so what is, if you object to that settlement for reasons other than a lack of authority, what are those other reasons?
Okay, I'll tell you that. My other reason is, number one, our association is managed by a panel of 5 board members, not one. And one person cannot make the decision to make a payout like that, number one. Number two, once the decision was made by the Department of Labor, Tom Olson should have went back to the board first and discussed it with the board, because the board would have definitely appealed that decision. Tom Olson, the fact that he took it upon himself, he didn't even give the board of directors a chance to even respond to the allegations.
So you're saying that, how would the board have appealed that decision, and what decision are you referring to?
Objection form.
What decision are you referring to that should have been appealed?
The decision that that there was wrongdoing by the association.
So you're saying the Department of Labor was wrong?
I think they were wrong. Yes.
Why was the Department of Labor wrong?
Because there were some documents filled out prior to the employment of those employees. And if Tom Olson would have came to the board of directors after they made the decision, those documents could have been considered by the Department of Labor. And because he didn't, we didn't even have a chance to present our side.
And what were those documents?
It was pre-employment documents, some pre-employment documents that agreements that were made between the employers and the employees and the association. And
how would those agreements have caused the Department of Labor to reconsider its position?
Objection form.
That would have been up to the board to decide, but the board never had the opportunity to decide. That's why it was totally wrong and illegal for Tom Olson to go into the bank account and single-handedly pull that money out and distribute it to not all of the employees that were affected, but only the ones that were that he was friends with. Ms. Provost never got her check.
Objection non-responsive. What is it about these documents that would have caused, that leads you to believe the Department of Labor would, if it had received these documents, would have caused it to reconsider its position with regard to Sterling Green?
Well, first of all, I wasn't on the board at the time, but with the knowledge I have of what happened, the fact that the board was unable to make the decision because one person illegally went in the bank account and dispersed money without a board quorum, it never would have gotten even considered.
Objection non-responsive. What do these documents say that would have caused the Department of Labor, in your view, to reconsider its position if those documents have been given to the Department of Labor?
Objection form. He's answered it a couple of times. You don't like his answer. You're asking an open-ended question, and he's answered it open-ended.
He hasn't stated what's in the documents or why they would have caused the Department of Labor to reconsider its position.
Go ahead, Anthony, if you even know his question is.
I believe they had something to do with agreeing to pay them a higher salary and just always get straight pay instead of giving them a low salary and being able to make overtime.
So the documents involved a waiver on the part of these employees of the right to collect overtime. Is that correct?
Objection form.
My answer stands is what it was.
Okay. With regard to the money spent by Mr. Olson without authority, do you have any other objections to him spending that money other than the lack of authority for him to do it?
Excuse me?
With regard to Olson spending Sterling Green money, is your objection to him spending that money due to his lack of authority for spending it?
Objection form.
It's always up to the board of directors quorum to decide what monies are spent of the association. And if you don't have the authority from the board of directors, you're totally in the wrong. That's my answer.
Objection non-responsive. So let me put it this way. You object to Mr. Olson spending a certain amount of money because the board didn't authorize him to spend it, correct?
Yeah. Right.
And so my follow-up to that is, other than the lack of authority, are there any other reasons you objected to those expenditures?
Well, some of those things,
I'll object form. Go ahead.
some of the monies that were spent were looked like for software that it appears that he bought a bunch of software that allowed him to handle association business from his home. You know, and that's not how we do business.
Okay. Any other reasons for objecting to those expenditures?
Mainly because of, a quorum decision is what manages our association, not a one-person show.
I understand that, but my question is, other than the lack of authority, are there other reasons for your objections to those expenditures?
Yeah, well, if he's spending money on his own personal bills and his own personal, putting gas in it, fuel in his vehicle and things of his own, that's the very reason why we need a quorum of the board of directors to spend money.
How much money did he spend for his own benefit instead of Sterling Green benefit?
I don't know that answer.
Okay, let me ask you this.
We have it all documented, sir. We have everything documented.
Let me ask you this. Do Sterling Green employees, if they are conducting Sterling Green business in their personal automobiles, say running errands or buying supplies for Sterling Green, and they are using up gas, do they seek compensation for Sterling Green for the amount of miles driven or the amount of gas used at present?
Well, Ms. Provost does a lot of running around in her own personal vehicle, and she doesn't go in and use Sterling Green funds to put fuel in her truck or her time doing that. That's not how we operate.
So does she have Is she ever paid for her expenditures that she incurs in connection with Sterling Green business?
Not that I know. I've never heard of her doing that.
Okay.
Furthermore, everything we spend money on since I've been on the board has been 100% accountability. We keep all receipts. We keep every detail of what we spend money on. So if there's no accountability when Mr. Olson was on the board and he was spending money, that's a problem. That's always going to be a problem. That's why we have this lawsuit right now. Lack of accountability, lack of authority.
Have you finished your answer?
Yes.
I'm going to object as non-responsive. My next question is as follows. Sterling Green claims that each board member has knowledge of ongoing Sterling Green expenses caused in 2019 by Olson's misconduct in 2018. Can you identify Sterling Green expenses caused in 2019 by Olson's misconduct in 2018?
Objection 4.
If I had the documents in front of me, yes, I could, but I don't, so I can't right now.
What documents would aid you in doing that?
Bank statements, mainly.
How would bank statements, are these 2019 bank statements?
2018 bank statements.
Well, I'm going to have to object as non-responsive because the question goes to expenses incurred by Sterling Green in 2019, not 2018. So I'll ask you again.
I have no idea. Not of 2019, no.
Okay.
I was on the board in 2019, and before I became on the board, the receiver was in effect. So since I've been on the board, we've been 100% accountable.
Okay. Moving on to the second exhibit, which is a 45-page PDF. I'm going to ask the court reporter to put that up on the screen. Mr. Taft, I'm going to ask you to review the first 2 pages of this document, which were produced in discovery by Sterling Green as SG 000262, SG 000263.
Wow. Yeah, this is the stuff I'm talking about right here. All of this stuff right here. This right here is a result of somebody spinning totally out of control. Totally out of control. Okay,
You had a chance to review the document.
I did.
This document contains a list of bank withdrawals and card charges from various vendors.
Yes.
And my question to you is, do you have any knowledge as to the purpose of any of these charges and withdrawals?
Yeah, I do. But I'm looking at, you know, Sarah Bass. Sarah Bass, I understand was a person that, number one, there was a bylaws committee that was created by Tom Olson, not by a quorum of board of directors as required by bylaws, by Tom Olson. And Tom Olson hired, from what I understand, Sarah Bass to direct the bylaws committee, the unauthorized bylaws committee, and decided to pay her the amounts on this document here.
Are you aware of the purpose of any other charges or withdrawals on this document?
All of these withdrawals on here. Wild Apricot, that was for his own business. He
Hold on, what's the basis for that statement?
well, Tom Olson has he was doing some of his own business while he was on the side, I guess. And Wild Apricot was being used, if I'm not mistaken, in his other businesses. Hold on here.
How do you know what Wild Apricot wasn't? How do you know? Wait a minute, hold on a second.
Unauthorized. There was no board quorum to buy Specs liquor from that store.
Y'all are gonna have to speak one at a time. When y'all talk over each other, I can't hear anything,
Okay.
and nothing's getting on the record. So
Okay.
please, one at a time.
I'm answering the question.
Go ahead.
Excuse me?
Go ahead.
Okay, what is this on the screen right here?
I don't know what it is. I don't know how it got there.
Go ahead.
Good company. Going out to a restaurant, supposedly taking some vendor out to a restaurant. You got to have a board quorum to make those kind of decisions to do that kind of stuff.
Anthony, just let him ask you questions.
Okay.
Okay, so with regard to apricot, do you know whether wild apricot purchase was for use in I understand you think Mr. Olson used wild apricot in his personal business. Do you know whether wild apricot was used for Sterling Green business during that, the period of March to July or after May 31 of, let me rephrase that.
Please.
Wild apricot, the wild apricot charge you referred to. Was wild apricot's services used by Sterling Green at any point between March and July 2018?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. And do you know the Good Company Catering, do you know whether that charge was for people going out to dinner or for something being catered at Sterling Green?
It really doesn't matter. If there wasn't a board quorum, it was illegal.
Objection non-responsive. I wasn't asking whether it was approved or illegal. My question is, do you know whether that Good Company Catering charge stems from people going out to dinner or from a meal being catered at Sterling Green?
Are you there, Anthony? He looks like he's frozen up.
I think we just lost him.
I will try to text him.
Would you like to go off the record?
Please, why don't we?
The record at 10:05. We are back on the record at 10:20.
Mr. Taft, I'm going to change subjects for a minute. Were you aware that the projector and screen that you were referencing a few minutes ago actually belonged to a member of the bylaws committee?
No, that's not what was told to me. And that's not what Olson said either.
You claim he told you he purchased those items?
Yeah, he said he provided those to the bylaws committee. And when I was on the bylaws committee, they even said that he provided that to them.
But did anybody tell you that I understand he provided them, but did Mr. Olson ever tell you that Sterling Green owned the projector and screen?
What was told to me that by the bylaws committee that Olson purchased the screen and projector for the purpose of the bylaws committee.
And who on the bylaws committee told you that?
Robert Collins and Livingston Hampton.
Is forcing employees, with regard to the Department of Labor dispute, my question is forcing employees to waive their right to overtime legal?
Objection form, don't answer the question. Instructing you not to answer the question. Council knows full well it calls for a legal answer and a legal question. That's what happens when you get questions thrown to you by your client. I'm instructing you not to answer the question.
Mr. Chesney, I'm looking at the rules regarding instructing witnesses to not answer questions. And Texas Rule of Civil Procedure 199.5F. An attorney may instruct a witness to not answer a question, to preserve a privilege, comply with a court order, or these rules, protect a witness from an abusive question, or one for which an answer would be misleading, or secure a ruling pursuant to paragraph G. I don't see legal conclusion listed in here. So my question to you, sir, is what is the basis for you instructing the witness to not answer the question?
Because you are abusing the question, and in fact, it calls for a legal conclusion, and it's an improper question. I'm instructing you not to answer the question. If you don't like it, you can go to the judge and get a ruling.
Thank you for your response. Mr. Taft, did Sterling Green force employees to waive their right to overtime?
No, they didn't.
Okay, returning to Sterling Green 262, 263. Do you know whether, you already testified you had no involvement with the Sterling Green Board of Directors during 2018, correct?
That's correct.
And so my question is, do you know whether Sterling Green used wild apricot during 2018?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Ask the question again.
Sure. Do you know whether Sterling Green used wild apricot during 2018?
Objection form.
Do you need the question repeated?
Yeah.
Do you know whether Sterling Green used wild apricot during 2018?
As far as I know, they didn't. As far as I know.
Am I correct that you had no role with regard to Sterling Green's board of directors or the management of Sterling Green during 2018?
Objection form.
That's true. I didn't have relationship with them back then, but since I've been on the board, I've been able to look at things.
Okay. Well, let me put it more directly. Mr. Olson contends that he purchased wild apricot and used it for Sterling Green business in 2018. Do you dispute that?
I'll object the form. Don't know where that contention is. Could you please tell us where he makes that such contention? Your premise, your question is.
It's in the expert report of Ms. Zahner, but if you could confine your objections to those that are permitted by the rules of civil procedure, it would be appreciated. That is a speaking objection, and it is not allowed by the rules of civil procedure.
Objection.
You dispute the contention that Mr. Olson purchased and used wild apricot for Sterling Green business in 2018.
Objection form.
I don't believe it.
What's the basis for disputing that contention?
Objection form.
I don't believe it.
Objection non-responsive. What's the basis for disputing that contention?
Objection form.
I just don't believe it.
Objection non-responsive. I'm not asking you what you believe. You say you dispute that contention. I'm asking you what the basis for disputing that contention is. The basis for your belief. What is the basis?
Because I haven't seen anything that we've used wild apricot on.
Okay, thank you. Other than the apricot, wild apricot, and the good catering charge, are there any charges or purchases reflected on Sterling Green 262, 263 that you believe were not for the benefit of Sterling Green?
Every one of those charges that I saw on that document were unauthorized. And if they were unauthorized, that was, it couldn't be for the good of Sterling Green.
I'm going to object as non-responsive. Mr. Taft, I'm going to use a bad analogy to try to explain my point. Do you live in a house?
I already told you I'm a homeowner.
Okay. You have a lawn, right?
Yeah.
Let's say on a Saturday, this coming Saturday, you're out of town. I come over to your place, I bring my lawnmower, I cut your lawn for you. You come home and you're surprised and slightly annoyed that somebody has cut your lawn. I call you up at 8 o'clock Saturday night and you say, and I say to you, Mr. Taft, I know you didn't authorize me to do it. I don't want you to pay me, but I cut your lawn today. Now, I may have done it without your authority, but would you agree with me that at some level you've actually benefited because somebody cut your lawn and saved you the task of cutting it or paying somebody to cut it?
Objection form.
First of all, if you knew me, you would know nobody cuts my lawn. And if you would have cut my lawn, you would have been in trouble.
Okay.
So those are bad analogy on your part. You're right. I agree with you.
But do you get my point that it's possible to do something for somebody's benefit without their authority?
Yeah. Well, if you would have, your analogy, had you came over here and mowed my grass, I would have been pissed, and it wouldn't have been a good thing. Even if you did think you were doing it in good faith.
Would you agree with me that it's possible to do something for someone's benefit without them authorizing you to do it?
Objection form. We're not here to have a legal class. Objection form.
All right, let me put it this way, Mr.
Questions as you're required to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chesney. With regard to the charges listed on 262, 263, other than the fact that they were not approved by the board, other than the fact that they were not approved by the board, let me rephrase it. I understand you believe that these charges and withdrawals listed on this document were not authorized by Sterling Green. Actually, I think I've got a better way of phrasing that. Is the reason you believe that these charges and withdrawals were not for the benefit of Sterling Green the fact that they were not authorized by Sterling Green?
Objection form. Answer that. I don't know how many times he's got to say they were unauthorized. You've asked it at least.
Thank you for speaking objection. It's appreciated.
You can answer if you.
When authorized by the board of directors, it was totally wrong. There's no way of getting around that. There's no way of getting around it and trying to say that if it was for the good of the board or if it was good for the association, if it wasn't authorized by the board of directors, it was wrong. That's my answer.
And is that the reason is it the only reason you view these charges as objectionable, the fact that they were unauthorized?
Objection form. You can answer the question.
Not only that, we have a policy at the property down at Sterling Green where the office is in the pool. And there's a policy that says no alcohol. So if Olson went out and bought alcohol unauthorized and brought it on the premises, that was another reason why it was a wrong thing to do. And then the rest of it was stored in the office.
Okay.
So the point is, this guy is not following the rules at all. You know, this is why we have a lawsuit going right now, because he is oblivious of following rules. He feels like he's above the law.
Did any of these charges or withdrawals listed in this document go for the benefit of Mr. Olson alone, as opposed to Sterling Green?
I think they were all for, in one way or another, for his personal gain.
And what's the basis for that contention?
Because of his character and what he was doing the whole time. That's the basis of my answer.
What do you mean by his character?
The way he handled people, the way he sidestepped every rule, the way he conducted himself. I believe that every one of those charges were for his own benefit.
And the reason you contend that is because of the way he conducted himself when he was involved with the board.
Yeah.
Any other reason?
Well, other than some of that stuff was totally illegal as well.
And by illegal, you mean not authorized by the board?
Not authorized, period. If we had signs up saying no alcohol, and we had signs up saying, you know, you can't bring a firearm around the association, things like that. That all ties into Tom Olson is above the law.
Any other reason?
And we don't tolerate that.
Any other reason?
That's my answer.
Okay. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit. Because it might, let's see here. All right, Tom Olson is designated an expert, Helga's honor. That
Excuse me?
Tom Olson has designated an expert in this case named Helga's honor. I'm asking the court reporter to identify Mrs. Honor's report as Deposition Exhibit 3. Does the court reporter have that report? Mr. Taft, have you ever seen this report before?
Hang on. No, I haven't seen this report.
Do you know who Josh Williams is?
I do.
Did Josh Williams prepare an audit report for Sterling Green?
Yes, he did.
In this report, Ms. Zahner asserts that Mr. Williams does not have the qualifications to take responsibility for an audit engagement or issue an audit report. My question is, do you disagree with that assertion?
Well, I really don't know if he is or not.
Okay.
But I can say this. The things that were pointed out in the bank statements and in our records that Josh Williams discovered, now we know as well. And the bank statements say it all. So whether this report or whether somebody, yeah, you can shoot the messenger all you want, but whether he was authorized or unauthorized, we still have the same facts when we look at our bank statements. And the fact that there were no minutes, board minutes to support any of the charges.
Are you done with your answer?
Yes.
Objection non-responsive, move to strike. Ms. Zahner asserts on page 5 of the report that the audit report of Mr. Williams does not include an independent analysis. Do you disagree with that assertion?
Yeah, I disagree.
Why do you disagree with it?
Because I don't know who these people are and what their basis of how they came up with all of this stuff.
And any other reasons?
Yeah, matter of fact, now that I see this is the Weaver report, I have seen this document before. And the fact that whoever did this audit or whatever it is, never came to our office.
Do you disagree with Ms. Zahner's assertion that the audit report does not provide findings in addition to what was presented to Josh Williams by Sterling Green Management?
Objection form.
I don't know.
Ms. Zahner asserts on page 8 of her report that all but 8 of the transactions let me rephrase that. Ms. Zahner asserts in her report that only 8 of the transactions listed in Sterling Green 262, 263 were for personal expenses.
Objection form. Do you want to read the report or what? Is there a question there?
I'm asking the witness if he disagrees with that assertion.
I don't know what assertion you're making.
Mrs. Honor asserts that only 8 of the transactions listed in 262, 263 for a total amount of $61.25 were for personal expenses for Mr. Olson as opposed to Sterling Green, as opposed to Sterling Green's benefit. Do you disagree with that assertion?
I 100% disagree with that.
What's the basis for your disagreement?
Like I said, if you weren't authorized to spend the money, it was wrong. That's my take on it.
Any other bases for your disagreement with that assertion of Ms. Honor?
I already told you. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. You have to have authorization to do these things.
Ms. Honor asserts that in her review of Sterling Green bank records, she found that its expenditures from April to July of 18 were consistent with its expenditures during the same period in prior years, with the exception of the Department of Labor settlement. My question to you is, do you dispute the validity of that statement of Ms. Honor?
Yeah, I dispute.
And what is the basis for your disputing it?
Well, number one, I don't know where she got her information from. I've never heard of this person. They've never been to the office that I know of. So, I don't buy any of this right here.
Any other bases for disputing that assertion? Are there any other bases for disputing that assertion?
That was my answer.
The document that Sterling Green had employees sign in connection with, that was that issue, that you believe should have been presented to the Department of Labor. Do you know the name of the Sterling Green employee or manager who had employees sign that document or documents?
I think it was a board member. I don't remember who it was.
Was it Dorothy MALVEAUX?
Maybe so. I don't know. I wasn't on the board at the time.
Do you know whether those employees signed those documents before Mr. Olson was on the board of directors?
I have no idea, but I do know that the documents were signed. And it wasn't a forced thing. I understand they agreed to do it that way.
Were you present when they
No.
when they signed those documents? Is that a no? I can't hear him.
I said, no, I wasn't.
Okay, thank you. The next document in this exhibit, group exhibit 2, I believe it's group exhibit 2, is Sterling Green's amended responses to requests for disclosures. And pages 9, 10, 11 of the PDF contain Sterling Green's claimed economic damages. My first question concerns the unauthorized security service increase that is listed at the top of page 9.
page 9. Okay, on page 9, what are you referring to?
At the top of page 9, number 2, right there, unauthorized security service increase.
Yes.
Sterling Green claims it incurred damages when Olson switched security service contractors. He allegedly terminated Unique Security and hired Seal Security. Do you have any knowledge as to the amounts paid for each security company's services by Sterling Green?
Objection form.
Only according to the documents that we have that reflect the costs.
Have you yourself reviewed the contracts entered into each of these companies by Sterling Green?
No, I haven't. But what I have done was we talked about, we discussed it, and it was found out that that Olson terminated the contract with one company and entered another contract with a different company, and you cannot do that without a majority decision by the board of directors.
Do you object to the change in security contractors for any reason other than the failure of Mr. Olson to obtain the approval of the board of directors?
That's why I object. That's why I disagree with him making the change at all.
I understand that, but are there any reasons other than objection non-responsive? I understand that, but my question is, other than the lack of board approval, are there any other reasons you object to the change in security contractors?
Yeah, because it subject us to a lawsuit.
Were you aware that, by the way, where was this lawsuit filed?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Have you ever seen a petition in connection with this lawsuit?
No, I haven't.
Who filed this lawsuit?
I think it was Unique Security.
And who told you Unique Security, if anyone, told you Unique Security filed a lawsuit against Sterling Green?
Well, that's just what I heard. The board, the board had discussed it, and I think the representative from that company had called the association and mentioned it to Sharon Provost, the office manager.
I have to object as non-responsive. My question is, who told you that Unique Security filed a lawsuit against Sterling Green?
The representative called the office and said that they were filing a lawsuit against Sterling Green.
Objection non-responsive. Did the representative call you?
No, not me.
Who told you the representative? How did you learn the representative called the office?
I just told you that. I just answered that question.
Objection non-responsive. You haven't told me that. Did Sharon Provost tell you that?
I told you that the office manager received the call.
How did you learn the office manager received the call?
Because she told me that she received the call.
Thank you.
But I've already said that.
There's some testimony in this case that Unique Security personnel frequently failed to patrol the grounds of Sterling Green. Do you dispute that?
No, yes, I dispute that because when I've never seen them not do their job personally.
There's been testimony in this case that Unique Security refused to provide money so that its security personnel at Sterling Green could purchase gasoline for their automobiles. And as a result, they did not drive the automobiles throughout the community, patrolling the community. Do you dispute that?
Objection failed.
I believe that's a bald-faced lie.
What's the basis for your claim that is a bald-faced lie?
Because like I said, I've never seen them not patrol.
Do you have any other bases for claiming that's a bald-faced lie?
I think Olson wanted a different security company and he terminated theirs and got the security company that he wanted. That's my opinion.
Sterling Green alleges it was forced to pay certain attorneys due to the misconduct of Mr. Olson.
Excuse me?
Sterling Green claims it was forced to pay attorney's fees to certain attorneys due to the misconduct of Mr. Olson.
I still didn't understand your
It's
question.
not a question.
You're not letting me finish the question. The question, let me finish, please. Sterling Green is claiming as damages in this case, fees are paid to certain attorneys. These attorneys include Zach Huang. Sterling Green claims, okay, my question is, what is the misconduct of Mr. Olson that caused Sterling Green to be required to pay attorney's fees to Mr. Huang?
If the board didn't decide to hire these attorneys and use those attorneys or authorize Olson to use those attorneys, that should be on Tom Olson.
What is the misconduct of Mr. Olson that caused Sterling Green to be required to pay attorney's fees to Susan Rice?
I don't know the answer to that question.
What is the misconduct of Olson that caused Sterling Green to pay attorney's fees to Chris Connery?
I don't know the answer to that question.
What is the misconduct of Mr. Olson that caused Sterling Green to be required to pay attorney's fees to Mr. Nixon? Tom Nixon.
Tom Nixon. Hey, you know, I really have to use the restroom real quick. Can we take a break? Oh, go.
Absolutely.
Can we?
Question. That's fine.
Right there?
I can't hear you, Anthony.
Did you hear what I said?
No, we couldn't hear it.
Can we take a break?
Yes.
Yeah, something's going on with the, yeah, sure.
Off the record at 10:56.
Should we get an update on comp?
Back on the record at 11:01.
What is the misconduct of Mr. Olson that caused Sterling Green to be required to pay attorney's fees to Tom Nixon?
Well, from what I understand, all of these attorneys came into play because of this lawsuit that Olson filed against Dorothy MALVEAUX. And he did that on his own. It wasn't a Sterling Green lawsuit. And all of those attorneys were for that lawsuit. That was and the judge, I believe, made a ruling that he had no authority to make that lawsuit. So yeah, that would be on him.
What is the misconduct of Mr. Olson that caused Sterling Green to pay sums to receiver Eva Engelhardt?
Well, because all this lawsuit stuff, had he not filed that lawsuit against Dorothy MALVEAUX, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in right now. Or we wouldn't have had to go through the receiver.
How did the lawsuit stuff lead to the receivership?
It had a lot to do with it. I mean, it was just the chaos that was going on that was caused by Olson. That was why we went in the receivership.
So the receivership occurred because of the lawsuit against MALVEAUX and because of the chaos caused by Olson. What chaos did Olson cause?
It was caused by Olson.
What was the chaos?
The big takeover, doing everything on his own and not using a board of directors to make decisions and spend money.
What is the misconduct of Olson that caused Sterling Green to have to pay funds to receiver Seth Kretzer?
Same answer as my last one.
The lawsuit and the chaos.
The chaos. Unauthorized spending, decision-making without board approval. You know, taking documents out of the office.
And what misconduct of Olson caused Sterling Green to have to pay money to attorney Mitch Katine?
The same. Yeah, same. Mitch Katine.
The lawsuit and the chaos. Anything else? Well, what exactly did he do that caused Sterling Green to have to pay money to attorney Mitch Katine?
What did he do?
That's the question.
Mitch Katine was the receiver's attorney. Had we not had a receiver, we wouldn't have had Mitch Katine. So that's why. Same answer as far as Seth Kretzer.
Sterling Green seeks to recover damages for employment decisions made by Olson that it claims were not authorized by the board of directors. What are the employment decisions that Olson made for which Sterling Green seeks to recover damages from him?
The employment decision to employ Safe as a manager, that wasn't board authorized. The decision to give Kathy Hairbottle a major raise was not a board decision. That's the name two right there.
Why not?
Excuse me?
What are the other employment decisions for which Sterling Green seeks to recover from Mr. Olson?
I don't have the list in front of me, so I'm not going to answer that.
Are you refusing to answer, or are you telling me you just don't know what they are?
I just said that I don't have the list of documents in front of me, so I can't answer that.
Okay. Sterling Green also seeks to recover $4,486.40 in connection with a loan obtained from Tom Olson by Andy Garza. In its amended response as to request for disclosure, Sterling Green states, quote, payment not yet incurred by Sterling Green, but legal liability remains outstanding, would not have been incurred but for Olson's misconduct. What misconduct of Mr. Olson resulted in Sterling Green's liability to Andy Garza?
Number one, a single person can't enter into a loan on the association's behalf. That's right in our bylaws. And the fact that he went and did that on his own, like he did everything else on his own, that put us in a position. And mind you, he mentions that the money that he borrowed from Andy Garza was to pay, make payroll. Well, I understand that when Miss MALVEAUX and what's her name? Well, when they moved the money, they paid all the employees, and Tom Olson instructed his people that were like, that he was controlling, he instructed them not to accept payment. And what they did is then he went ahead and claimed that he borrowed this money from Andy Garza, that the association was going to be held accountable for. And that was just a big lie, you know. So yeah, that was more blatant misconduct.
Did Ms. MALVEAUX move the money? Is that right?
I think it was the two of the board members.
And when those two members of the board moved the money, did the board authorize them to do that?
I believe they did.
When did they authorize them to do that?
I think they have board minutes for that. I'm not. I don't have it in front of me, but
can a vote of two members of the board at a meeting at which only two board members are present authorize something like that?
Objection fair.
Board members on the committee on the board, that's a majority.
Is it a quorum?
Objection form. Lack of context.
If two members are at a Sterling Green board meeting, how many directors are there on the Sterling Green board of directors?
5.
And there are 5. And so if there are 5 directors, how many are required for a quorum?
3.
Can a Sterling Green board of directors meeting at which only 2 directors are present do anything?
If there's only 3 people on the board at the time, I believe that the majority will be 2.
Objection non-responsive. My question is, if there are only 2 directors at the meeting, does that constitute a quorum?
Objection form.
I just answered the question, and that's my answer. So.
And were you present when, how did you learn that Mr. Olson instructed employees to not accept payment?
I found out about that. Some people were talking about that.
And what are the names of the people who told you about it?
I don't remember.
Were you present when Mr. Olson instructed these employees not to accept payment?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
But they didn't accept payment. And Olson ended up getting a loan on his own from another home. Well, actually, he wasn't a homeowner.
What are the names of the employees who did not accept payment?
Kathy Hairbottle, Safe, and I forgot the other guy's name.
Sterling Green seeks to recover $2,000 for payments made to Patrick Keys, and it claims that the fees of Mr. Keys would not have been incurred but for the misconduct of Mr. Olson. My question is, what misconduct on the part of Olson led Sterling Green to make payments to Mr. Keys in the amount of $2,000?
I don't know who that is.
Okay. Sterling Green also claims that payments to Sarah Bass in the amount of $960 would not have occurred but for the misconduct of Mr. Olson. My question is, what misconduct on the part of Olson led to the payments to Sarah Bass?
The misconduct was hiring her without a majority of the board of directors, and paying her without the majority of the board of directors authorization.
Any other misconduct?
Putting a bylaws committee together without a board majority. You can't make you can't create a committee without the board. The board has to create committees, subcommittees, not one person. One person can't do that. That's illegal.
Do I understand correctly, it's your contention that Mr. Olson was at the meeting at which the board of directors of Sterling Green voted to remove Mr. Olson from the board?
Yeah, he was there.
And that was in August or September of 2019?
Initially, it was in April.
What was did the vote to remove him in April of 19 or August or September of 19?
Initially, it was in April.
What do you mean by the term initially?
Initially, it was in April.
Well, did they vote objection non-responsive? What do you mean by the term? What was the month in which the meeting actually occurred and when
We
the
voted
board
in April to remove Olson from the board of directors.
April of 19?
Yes. And then we didn't enforce it. And down the road, I think whenever we did do it, he was not complying with the decision that the board made.
Okay, if we can move along to it's page 26 of the 45-page PDF. That is Exhibit 2. Mr. Taft,
Yes.
Have you had a chance to review the document that's comprises page 26 of this exhibit?
I'm trying to get my mouse to work. Hang on.
Have you had a chance to review the document?
Hang on a sec. You just talking about the first document?
Yeah, it's page 26 of the PDF.
Oh, page 26.
Anthony, can you tell by, oh, I see, I see it,
Now, yes.
26, okay.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
Okay, so are these the Sterling Green board meeting minutes for a meeting of Friday, June 7, 2019?
That was a HOA meeting. That wasn't a board directors meeting. That was a member of a meeting of the members, a monthly meeting
Of the board of directors?
of the homeowners. That wasn't an executive meeting.
Okay. So this document,
I'm sorry, can you scroll that down a little bit, Anthony? So I can see the heading? No, the other way. Okay,
Yeah, it says monthly HOA meeting.
okay,
In other words, that's a meeting where all the homeowners can come and just, listen to the minutes of last month and go through the agenda that we have for them.
and does this document contain your signature?
It does.
And did you prepare this document?
Yes. I prepared the initial document, yes.
If Mr. Olson was removed from the board of directors in April of 2019, why is he listed as a present board member on this document?
Like I said, we enforced his removal at that meeting. It was voted on. It was The motion was made, it was voted on, it was second, it was voted on, and it passed. But we did not enforce it. The board didn't enforce it.
Are there minutes that exist that reflect that meeting?
I don't know. I'm sure there probably is somewhere. I'm not sure.
And then if we could scroll down to the next document on page 26 or 27.
Now let me scroll down.
I think we just lost the videographer. No, we got the videographer. I think
So can we go off the record?
Sure.
Off the record at 11:23?
I think we just lost the court reporter.
Yes.
Okay.
We're back on the record at 11:28.
Mr. Taft, I'm going to represent to you that the Sterling Green meeting minutes of Monday, July 1, 2019 also list as present board members Walter Gant, Linda Boy, Anthony Taft, Ellen Pollock, and Tom Olson. If that is correct, would you agree with me that Sterling Green had yet to enforce its expulsion of Mr. Olson from the board of directors as of Monday, July 1, 2019?
Yeah.
Okay.
That never came back up until we actually did it. And
I will represent to you.
He wouldn't bring the equipment back.
And have you already described the equipment you're talking about earlier in the deposition?
Some of it.
What equipment did you not describe earlier in the
The
deposition?
equipment that I told you is what I remembered. And if you recall, I said that I don't have the list in front of me, so that's why I didn't say anything else.
I will represent to you that the Sterling Green HOA meeting, August 5, 2019 minutes list 4 board members as present, but not Tom Olson. And I will represent to you.
Or was it a?
Not executive meeting minutes, just a Sterling Green HOA meeting.
Okay, all right, I remember that.
I'll further represent to you that the Sterling Green HOA minutes for September 9, 2019 also list board members present, but also do not list Mr. Olson as present. Is that consistent with your recollection that the Sterling Green Board of Directors finally enforced its expulsion of Mr. Olson from the board in August or September of 2019?
Yeah, somewhere around in there. I don't remember the exact date.
The August 5, 2019 meeting minutes list you as present. Do you have any reason to dispute that?
The August 9th?
August 5, 2019 HOA meeting minutes list you as present. Any reason to dispute that?
No reason to dispute that.
Okay. Did Sharon Provost tell Tom Olson that he had to leave that meeting, quote, because I said so, unquote?
I don't remember exactly what he said.
Did you observe Ms. Provost tell Tom Olson he had to leave?
Yeah, I believe I did. I don't remember what was said though.
Did the board of directors authorize Ms. Provost to instruct Olson to leave if he appeared at that meeting? Did it authorize her in advance to do that?
Ms. Provost is the office manager, and she has the authority from the board to watch over the premises. And if there's a discord, she has the authority to ask people to leave if need be. And
When did the board give her that authority?
the board, she had the authority.
Objection, non-responsive. When did the board give her that authority?
She had the authority.
Objection, non-responsive. I understand you believe she had that authority. I just want to know when the board gave her that authority, the date of the meeting.
She had that authority.
Objection, non-responsive.
That's my answer.
Anthony, there's also nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. You don't have to make up dates.
Yeah.
So what was the date that the board authorized her to remove persons from the premises?
I don't know that date.
Do you recall attending a meeting where the board did that?
She had the authority to do office manager work.
Was there a
Property manager as well.
So in your view, when the board hired her as office manager, at that time, it implicitly authorized her to remove people from the premises?
Objection form.
It authorized her to manage the premises and the staff.
And it hired her as office manager in April 2019?
She was hired as office manager by the receiver.
So she was already office manager at the time you joined the board?
Yes.
And would it be safe to say that you believe that she had that authority before you joined the board?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would think yes.
Are you aware that section 209.002 of the Texas Property Code defines an owner as a person who holds record title to property in a residential subdivision and includes the personal representative of a person who holds record title to property in a residential subdivision?
No.
You didn't know that?
I hope he wouldn't.
Yeah, that's not a. If you're not a homeowner, you're not a homeowner. If your name is on the deed, you're not a homeowner, and we don't consider you one.
Okay.
And Tom was never a homeowner.
So is Sterling Green obligated to allow representatives of homeowners to attend Sterling Green HOA meetings?
Excuse me?
Is Sterling Green obligated by law to allow owners' representatives to attend HOA meetings?
Objection form.
We can ask anybody to leave. If you're being disruptive, we can ask you to leave. That's in our bylaws.
I have to object as non-responsive. Assuming that they are not being disruptive, is Sterling Green obligated to allow owners' representatives to attend HOA meetings?
I don't know.
Are you aware that Tom Olson was the representative of Christina Garza?
No, I'm not. I'm not aware of that.
Let me just finish the question. Are you aware that Tom Olson was the representative of Christina Garza, an owner of property at Sterling Green in 2018, 19, and 20?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Are you aware that section 209.0051C of the Texas Property Code provides that regular and special board meetings must be open to owners?
Objection form, instructing you not to answer the question.
What's the basis for instructing not to answer the question?
199.6, objections that abusive questions, including questions that inquire into matters clearly beyond the scope of discovery and argumentative, repetitious, or harassing, I am entitled to instruct him not to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chesney. Did Sterling Green violate section 209.0051C in ejecting Tom Olson from the August 2019 board meeting?
Objection 4.
I don't know.
Was there any discussion among the board members prior to the August 2019 at which Ms. Provost told Olson to leave about what should be done if Olson appeared at the meeting?
In a board meeting, no.
Was there a discussion among board members outside of a board meeting regarding that subject?
There was a lot of back and forth going on between Olson and Ms. Provost. And every time they were around each other, it was always a head-button thing. And, you know, it was becoming very disruptive.
Objection unresponsive. I appreciate that.
Provost talked to law enforcement about what could be done. And I think the law enforcement told her what she needed to do, not the board.
Okay. I have to object as non-responsive because my question really went to the discussions among the board members as to what should be done if Olson attempted to attend the August 2005 meeting. So were there any such discussions prior to the meeting?
I believe we talked about that, and we said that Ms. Provost should talk to the law enforcement and find out what could be done about that.
So the board was aware in advance that Ms. Olson or Ms. Provost might eject Olson from the meeting if he chose to attend. Is that correct?
No. That wasn't a predetermined thing by the board.
Did the board discuss the possibility that Olson would be forcibly removed from the meeting before the meeting?
I don't remember if that was discussed or not. But the fact that she asked him to leave, we backed her because he needed to leave.
Were all the members of the board present when she told Olson to leave?
I don't remember who was present.
Was a quorum of the board present?
Definitely present.
When she told Olson to leave, was it inside the meeting? Was it out in the parking lot? Where was it?
I think we were already getting ready for the meeting to start when he came up, and she and they started having words, and next thing you know, the police officer walked over and told him he needed to leave.
And where did the meeting take place?
At the pavilion on Sterling Green premises.
And when Provost instructed Olson to leave, did she do that inside the pavilion?
Objection 4.
It was under the pavilion. All the way in the back of the pavilion. I was all the way in the front of the pavilion. So that's why I couldn't really hear what was going on.
The minutes for the June 7, 2019 meeting indicate that among the items of discussion at the meeting was that the CPA is finishing the audit. As a director of Sterling Green, were you ever furnished with a report of the audit?
No, I didn't get a report until months later. I got a brief, and we were constantly looking after that brief that Mr. Williams made to the HOA. And that was the day we found out what his what the briefing that he gave was. We found out the same day that the rest of the HOA found out. And we started reviewing records after the fact. But we didn't get his report until months down the road, the actual report.
So you did receive a copy of the report, but it was several months after June 2019. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did anyone ever tell you that the audit was conducted by a CPA?
No, but I was under the assumption that he was a CPA.
Did Tom Olson object to the hiring, and did the person who performed the audit Josh Williams?
Yes.
Did Tom Olson object to the hiring of Mr. Williams to perform the audit?
I don't know, but it really wouldn't have mattered very much.
Did Tom Olson ever provide you with login information for the cloud-based storage?
Let me finish answering that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wasn't quite finished. You know, it was a lot of things that the board was going one direction, Tom Olson was going the other direction. So a lot of times when Tom Olson made his statements, it was kind of, we really wasn't listening to it anyway.
Did Mr. Olson object to the way that the audit was handled?
I don't remember how he, whether he was here or there, I don't remember.
Did Mr. Olson ever provide you with login information for the cloud-based storage system for Sterling Green financial records?
Excuse me?
Did Mr. Olson ever send you an email with login information for the cloud-based storage system with Sterling Green financial records?
Not that I can recall.
Have you ever reviewed Sterling Green financial records stored on the cloud?
I've never looked at a cloud. I know Tom Olson used to always talk about the cloud, and he put all the receipts on the cloud and threw all the receipts away. And I'm like, no, nobody does that. You don't throw receipts away for any reason.
So he told you he put receipts on the cloud and you never looked on the cloud, is that right?
I never had access to no cloud. I just heard him talk about it a lot.
And if I said to you that Tom Olson sent you an email with login information for the cloud, you would dispute that?
I don't know. I don't know if he sent that to me or not.
Okay.
I mean, if he has an email that he sent me, I'm sure you probably have it. If it was an email.
Was Mr. Olson removed from the board in order to prevent him from sharing his concerns regarding the audit with the Sterling Green Board of Directors and the members of Sterling Green?
Objection.
That's not why he was removed.
Article 4, Section 5 of the Sterling Green bylaws. Article 4, Section 5 of the Sterling Green bylaws authorize the members of Sterling Green to remove a member of the board of directors from the board. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
Did you consider at any point asking or asking the members of Sterling Green to remove Mr. Olson from the board?
Okay, this is my answer. If Olson wouldn't respect the quorum of the board of directors, the majority vote of the board, what make you think he's gonna respect the quorum of the association? He wouldn't. That's why we did what we did, because he wouldn't respect the majority vote of the board of directors.
Did a majority of the members of Sterling Green ever vote to remove Mr. Olson from the board?
No.
Was any such vote held by the members?
No. And one more thing, you're right, there was no vote held by the members, but the votes that were held by the board is required to respect, and Tom never did respect those votes.
Did the board of directors ever authorize the performance of an audit by Josh Williams?
Yes.
When did it do that?
I don't remember when.
Would it have been between March and July of 2019?
Objection, asked and answered. He already said he didn't know when, but then you go ahead and ask him dates. Objection, asked and answered.
You know if it was before or after you joined the board of directors?
I didn't get the question.
Do you know if the board approved the hiring of Mr. Williams to perform an audit before or after you joined the board of directors?
I think after I joined. Yeah, after I joined.
What were Mr. Williams' qualifications to perform an audit?
I don't remember. Because we were going to do our own audit, and decided we would bring him in and let him do it, since he had a degree in finance or whatever.
Do you know why the board decided to have Williams do it instead of doing the audit itself?
Because we felt that he had more experience at that type of work than we did.
And who provided Mr. Williams with Sterling Green records to review?
Well, it was a combination. I think Ms. Provost assisted him in getting records, and Ellen Pollock, I think, played a hand in that. And if I'm not mistaken, Linda Bowie may have helped with that as well.
Did Mr. Williams ever interview you or ask you questions in the course of performing his audit?
No, that's one thing he would not do. He didn't want to talk to anybody about goings on while he was doing his audit.
Did he tell you at some point he didn't want to interview anybody?
It was clear from the very beginning.
How did you learn, and from who did you learn that Mr. Williams did not want to talk to anyone in the course of performing his audit?
He came to one of our board meetings, if I'm not mistaken.
And what did he say at the board meeting that led you to believe he didn't want to interview anybody in the course of performing his audit?
He said that he was going to be performing the audit, and he didn't need any input. He was just going to look at the records.
What do you know what records were provided to Mr. Williams for his performance of the audit?
No, I don't know all the records they provided because I wasn't a part of that. And nor was I the president at the time either.
Do you have any idea what information was provided to him orally?
I wasn't there.
On the audit report, on the last page of the report below the signature, the report contains the words Joshua Williams, Shedrick McGill, CPA PC. Do you know what Shedrick M. McGill, CPA PC is?
No, I don't. Well, I learned, I've learned from listening to his deposition that that's a company that he works for.
The report of the audit is dated June 26, 2019, but I think you testified that you didn't receive the report until several months later, correct?
That's true.
When you read the audit report, were you surprised that it contains no indication that the auditor interviewed Mr. Olson?
Excuse me?
When you read the audit report, were you surprised it contains no indication that the auditor interviewed Mr. Olson?
Yeah, he didn't interview me either. I don't think he interviewed Walter Gann either, who's the president.
Did Ms. Provost ever tell you that Tom Olson and Kathy Hairbottle were shredding checks people gave to the association in payment of their assessment fees?
I don't know.
Were you aware that Sharon Provost had Tom Olson arrested when he was on the Sterling Green property at the time of the March 2020 annual Board of Directors election?
Sharon Provost didn't have Olson arrested. The police officer arrested Tom Olson.
I missed the date also.
March of 20.
Okay. That'll be the last question we talk about, March of 20, since it's beyond the scope of this lawsuit.
Okay, I think it's relevant under the doctrine of unclean hands. You're seeking equitable remedies or Sterling Green is seeking equitable remedies and its conduct with regard to Mr. Olson, both before and after the acts described in the petition are relevant to its equitable claims.
You are wrong. You are dead wrong.
Oh, that's possible, Mr. Chesney, but I think in the interest of getting a clean record, what I'd like to do is go through my questions. If you wish, you can instruct your witness not to answer. And I'll ask the basis.
And that's why the rule provides that if you inquire into matters clearly beyond the scope of discovery, I will instruct him not to answer.
Okay. Did Ms. Provost report Olson to the police at the time of the March 2020 meeting and claim that he was trespassing?
Object. Witness not to answer the question beyond scope of discovery.
Now I have to read that rule again.
Please do. 199.6.
Thank you. It's awfully kind of you to point that out for me.
Well, I know you have to read it. That's why I knew you had to. It's comment 4.
says you can instruct the witness not to answer an abusive question or one for which an answer would be misleading. Are you suggesting that these questions are abusive or misleading?
You clearly can't read it, or it says abusive questions include questions that inquire into matters clearly beyond the scope of discovery. And yes, a matter, any matter that occurred 1 year after the scope of this lawsuit is beyond the scope of discovery. I know that you got your questions from Tom Olson for the other lawsuit that's pending, but we're not going to do that. We're not going to ask questions about something that has nothing to do with this lawsuit. I'm not going to allow it.
Well, I can understand if you're not going to allow your client to answer, but I am going to ask them.
You can ask them.
Mr. Taft.
Yes.
Are you aware of any threatening behavior Mr. Olson engaged in at Sterling Green or towards Sterling Green personnel in the days leading up to the March 2020 election?
I'll object to the question, instruct the witness not to answer the question. It's beyond the scope of discovery.
Did the board authorize Ms. Provost in advance to report Mr. Olson to the police prior to his arrest at Sterling Green in March of 2020?
Object to the question, instruct the witness not to answer. That's beyond the scope of the inquiry of discovery.
Was the board aware in advance of the March 2020 election? Strike that. Was the board aware at the time that Ms. Provost was having Mr. Olson, let me rephrase that. At the time Mr. Olson was being arrested at Sterling Green in March 2020, was the board of directors aware that such arrest was in progress?
Objection. Instruct the witness not to answer. Is beyond the scope of discovery of this lawsuit.
Mr. Olson, Mr. Taft, were you aware that Mr. Olson had 12 proxies with him at the time he was arrested at Sterling Green in March 2020? And he had been authorized via said proxies to cast votes in the Sterling Green Board of Election of March 2020?
Objection. Instruct the witness not to answer the question. The question is beyond the scope of discovery of this lawsuit.
Did those proxies authorize Mr. Olson to attend the March 2020 Sterling Green election?
Objection. Form. Calls for a legal confusion.
Did the board ask Provost to explain why she contacted the police prior to his arrest in March 2020?
Objection to the question. Instruct the witness not to answer. Is beyond the scope of discovery of this lawsuit and the time periods of this lawsuit.
Mr. Taft, do you contend that there were lawful grounds for Mr. Olson's arrest in March 2020?
Objection to the question. Is beyond the scope of discovery, and instruct the witness not to answer the question.
Mr. Taft, were you aware that homeowners literally surrounded the officers as they arrested Mr. Olson and informed him he was authorized?
You can keep asking the questions. It's
I'm
clear.
almost done with these. No, I'm almost done with these.
I know you're done with his typed out sheets. I get that.
Were you aware that homeowners surrounded the officers as they arrested Mr. Olson in March of 20 and informed them that he was authorized to be at the Sterling Green for the election?
Objection form. Beyond the scope of discovery.
Oh, Lord. Please, please.
Mr.
And
Taft,
I'd really like to know what the
I'm
relevant.
sorry, one at a time, please.
okay.
Yes. Can you tell me what the relevance?
Change subjects for a second. My question is, Mr. Taft, Mr. Olson was originally elected to the board in March of 2018. Is that correct?
Yes.
And all board members are elected for 2-year terms, is that correct?
Yes.
And so had he not been removed from the board, Mr. Olson's term would have extended up and until the March 20 election and his replacement by another elected board member. Correct?
Under normal conditions, yeah.
Does Sterling Green have a right to prevent owners' representatives from attending Sterling Green board meetings? Member meetings, I should say.
Excuse me?
Does Sterling Green have a right to prevent owners' representatives from attending Sterling Green member meetings?
Yes, if they're disruptive, we can ask them to leave.
And if they are not disruptive, does Sterling Green have a right to prevent owners' representatives from attending Sterling Green member meetings?
I don't know.
Can you identify conduct on the part of Olson while he was on the Sterling Green Board of Directors that you believe was undertaken by him in bad faith and which caused Sterling Green to sustain losses?
Objection form calls for a narrative answer. You can answer, Anthony, to the extent you can.
I think I've already answered that. I mean, everything that I've said that he's done, that his behavior was subpar, is the answer to this question. And I think I've answered that about 10 times since we've been doing this deposition.
Well, the phrase bad faith hasn't come up yet in this deposition, so it really hasn't. But if I understand what you're saying, in your view, because Mr. Olson acted without authority in certain matters, on those occasions, he was acting in bad faith. And is that correct?
That in itself is in bad faith, sir. You know,
Okay.
if you're not following the rules, it's bad faith. I don't care how you spin it.
That's fine. My question is there anything other than his failure to act within or to comply with the rules that leads you to believe that his actions while a Sterling Green board member were in bad faith?
Yeah, that sheet that you presented a minute ago with all of those charges on it that were unauthorized, yeah, that has a lot to do with it.
Anything else?
Bad faith, every one of them.
Anything else? Anything other than the not acting within the rules and the unauthorized charges?
Yeah, well, you know, and also all of these women that were talking about him bullying them, that had a lot to do with it as well.
Anything else?
The disregard for the board quorum decisions.
Anything else?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And
You know, the issues that he had with the previous board also.
And you were not on the previous board, correct?
Oh, but everybody heard about him. I mean, I went to a lot of the HOA meetings, and it was a disaster. That's why I showed interest in being on the board in the first place.
Did you ever see Mr. Olson strike a woman?
No, I haven't.
Did you see him put his hands on a woman?
I haven't.
Did you observe Mr. Olson treat any woman in an abusive manner?
One time I was in the office, and I don't think Olson knew I was in the office, and it was a bunch of women in the office, and he was threatening to kick the door in, and he was going to get in the office, whether we liked it or not. And when we opened the door, he saw me, and then he backed down. So yeah, he was getting ready to bully his way through those women.
Were you on the board when this occurred?
Yes, I was.
Do you know the month this occurred?
I don't remember the month. It was probably kind of early on though, probably maybe in mid-April, May, somewhere around in there. I guess I don't remember.
So he was still on the board of directors at the time?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And did he gain access to the office at that time?
No, he didn't. I wasn't going to let him gain access to the office.
Okay. If I was to ask you of conduct on the part of Olson that you believe was undertaken by him without reasonable care, would your answer be the same answer when I asked you about acts of Mr. Olson that were not in good faith?
I'll object to the question. That is a legal question. Calls for a legal answer.
You can still answer the question, Mr. Taft.
Repeat the question.
Can you identify any conduct that you have not described thus far in your deposition testimony today of Mr. Olson while he was on the Sterling Green Board of Directors that you believe was undertaken by him without reasonable care?
Yeah. When he took boxes of documents out of the office, and I don't know where he took them, but they got pictures of him taking those boxes up, and putting them in his vehicle and taking them somewhere.
When did this happen?
And it leads me to the fact that we don't have any of the records that prior to when we got on the board. We have hardly any of those records. Where did he take those records? That wasn't in good faith to take the records out of the office to some undisclosed location, to where we don't have access to our records.
Do you know what was in the boxes?
It's the same boxes that we keep the rest of our records in.
Did you look in the boxes before they were removed?
No, I didn't. I just saw pictures of him with the boxes in his hands, and somebody finding it necessary to take pictures so they could document that he was actually taking those boxes away from the premises.
How many boxes did he take?
At least 2. And they're big boxes, so they hold a lot of records, 2 boxes.
Okay. Can you identify any conduct on the part of Olson while he was on the Sterling Green Board of Directors that you believe were not in the best interest of Sterling Green and which caused Sterling Green to sustain losses that you have not already discussed today?
Objection. You can answer the question.
Yeah. Several people observed Tom Olson bringing a firearm to the pool and firing it in the pool. Reckless behavior, unconducive to anything that could be construed as positive and for the association.
Anything
That's
else?
absurd.
Anything else other than that?
The fact that I understand that something was going on with the pool, and he rented some scuba gear to do whatever was needed to be done in the pool himself, when he's clearly not qualified to do that. And that's what I'm saying, just reckless behavior, reckless.
Anything else?
I'll object to form. Calls for narrative.
You know, making those purchases and stuff. You know, he claimed that he was purchasing a safe for $1,000 and, you know, bought this big safe in with no receipt. I mean, reckless behavior.
Is it possible the receipt's on the cloud?
If there was a receipt, it had been produced by now. And if there's a cloud with all these receipts on it, per se, it hasn't been produced. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no receipt. And even if it was on the cloud, there should be a tangible receipt still. I mean, I've never been with a company in my whole career that I spent money for a company and didn't have to produce receipts.
During the time you've been on the board of directors, has Sterling Green destroyed financial records that were compiled or created during the time Mr. Olson was on the board of directors?
Absolutely not. I've never seen any documents being destroyed ever. But now, mind you, when we first when I first got on the board and we first went in that office, it was shredded paper all over the office where Tom Olson sat at. It was shredded paper everywhere. And that's the only time I've ever seen, you know, the even existence of anything that was like, you know, documents being destroyed.
And in what month and year did you find all these shredded papers in the office?
I don't remember. It was early on, though.
Was this while you were on the board of directors?
Excuse me?
Did this occur while you were on the board of directors?
Yeah, when we went in there and saw all of that.
It occurred while you were on the board of directors?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't understand who gave him the authority to put anything on the cloud anyway. You know, receipts.
Is Sterling Green required to comply with the property code and its own bylaws in conducting annual meetings at which board members are elected?
Objection form. You can answer it, Anthony. It's a legal question.
Yeah, we go by our bylaws in the Texas Property Code.
Can homeowners vote by proxy at annual meetings?
You don't vote by proxy, you vote by ballot. No, you can't vote by proxy.
Can proxies be used in the process? Can proxies be used in homeowner board of director elections at Sterling Green?
Proxies can be used, but they have to be cast, they have to be turned in exchange for a ballot in order to be a vote.
Can the proxy
and when Olson got on the board, there was no ballots. All they had was proxies, so there were no ballots that were cast in that election.
Did you attend that election?
I did.
Did Susan Rice attend that election?
Yeah, I believe she did.
Can proxy holders physically turn in their proxies at board of election meetings?
They can.
All right, here's if Mr. Olson tried to attend the March 2020 meeting of Sterling Green with proxies and he was prevented from attending by the board of directors of Sterling Green, then the board of directors of Sterling Green prevented the homeowners who gave them the proxies from voting in that election. Do you agree with that statement?
Objection form. We're not here to talk about statements. We're asking questions, and I'll instruct him not to respond to that statement. It's beyond the scope of discovery in March of 2020.
Did Sharon Provost select and hire Josh Williams with the board's approval? Strike that. Did Ms. Provost select Mr. Williams?
I don't remember.
Has Sterling Green been audited on any other occasion since you've been on the board?
Have Sterling Green been audited?
On any occasions other than Mr. Williams since you've been on the board?
No.
Do you know who first recommended that Sterling Green be audited by an outside entity?
I think the board decided that because we were going to do our own audit.
Did any one particular individual, in your recollection, recommend that an outside audit be used?
No, there was no particular individual. That was a board decision. That's how we take care of business. If we're going to make a decision about something, we run it by the board and the board makes the decision.
Are there not occasions, though, when the board will make a decision after an individual board member makes a suggestion or a proposal?
Of course. I mean, that's where we make all of our decisions. Somebody has to come up with a suggestion.
Right. That's why I'm asking if an individual prior to the board voting to have Mr. Williams perform an audit suggested, say at a board meeting, that we should have an outside person do this audit.
It was discussed that we have an outside entity do our audit.
And did that discussion originate with any person suggesting an outside audit?
I'm sure it was.
Do you recall the name of that person?
I do not.
Okay. Would you say that you yourself are familiar with the manner in which Sterling Green stores its financial records?
Excuse me?
Would you say that you yourself are familiar with the manner in which Sterling Green stores its financial records?
I am now.
And are those financial records maintained by Ms. Provost?
Yes, they are. And our treasurer.
And the treasurer is Ms. Pollock?
No, she's the old treasurer. The new treasurer is Spence Murphy.
What types of records are among Sterling Green's financial records?
Objection form. Go ahead, Anthony.
Bank records, assessment records, records that you know, with vendors, all that kind of stuff, all the financial records.
What types of records are maintained that reflect Sterling Green expenditures?
Yeah.
What type of records are maintained by Sterling Green that reflect its expenditures?
Expenditure reports.
Anything else?
I don't know. Bank records. I mean, that's basically what we have.
The exhibit we identified earlier that listed all the charges and withdrawals made by Mr. Olson that Sterling Green believes are unauthorized. Do you know who created that record?
I don't know who created that. It was probably Joshua Williams. But all of those charges have been verified through bank records. So it really doesn't matter who came up with the document. The fact of the matter is those are true charges and they were not authorized.
Have you given all the reasons that you yourself voted for the removal of Mr. Olson from the board during your deposition today?
Objection form. Go ahead.
I don't know if I gave all my reasons, but I think you pretty much understand why, you know, we felt that Olson shouldn't be on the board anymore.
The reasons you voted to remove Mr. Olson from the board include his failure to respect the quorum and what else?
You already asked me this question, didn't you? I've answered this question already.
I'm trying to make sure I've got all your reasons for your.
Well, I've already given you the answer. So, you know, move to the next question. I've already answered that 10 times.
We will reserve the balance of our questions for trial.
Bam.
I'll reserve questions to the time of trial. I don't have any questions, Kathleen.
I'd like to add something for the record in that our ability to go on with the other 3 depositions today has been impaired because the court reporter has lost her access to the depositions through anything other than her iPhone. And that necessitates the rescheduling of the depositions.
Yes, and not that it needs to be said, but these are voluntary. We're voluntarily producing these individuals, and I, again, will voluntarily produce them on mutual agreed dates and times. I don't have anything further.
Thank you.
Off the record at 12:23.